This is what you have in front of you is the Kuntres HaChesed from Rav Dessler and Michtav. And the Kuntres HaChesed is written in an interesting way. If you take a look at the bottom in the note, it says Kuntres HaChesed. The Kuntres HaChesed for Rabbeinu Zatzal. In this pamphlet, it's quite long. He put together Pri Avodas Harbei Shonim, the fruit of many years of labor. Garino Rishon, the first seed, Mitkufas Kelm, was originally written by him when he was still a student in Kelm. This is very precious to him. Kaval Signum Bifneatsu has its own unique style. For the purpose of photocopying, it wasn't called photocopying back then. It was called something else. What it was called. Mimeographic, yes. Wrote a shorter version. But for the purpose of this book, we're giving the first version. And we're going to give as additional material the chidushim which are in the shorter version. And there is going to be also a second, in the second, a subsequent volume, Michtav, they put out a chelik beis of the Kuntres HaChesed. So this is, if you take a look at the subtitle of Kuntres HaChesed, it's called Pirkei HaNosein VaNotel, the chapters of givers and takers. And that's what he's going to talk about, basically the first couple of chapters. Paragraph Daber VaNosein VaNotel. Kasher Baruch Adam, when Hashem created man, He made him a giver and a taker. The power to give is a higher power. It's from the midos of Hashem. Who has mercy and does good and gives. Without receiving anything in return. As it says, it's not missing anything. If you do, you're righteous, what good do you do? What are you giving Hashem? We express him our gratitude, and this is a very important point to stress, which he will later on, that our gratitude is the basis of our avodas Hashem. Our great gratitude to Baruch Hu is all we can give him. There's nothing else we can give him. Everything else which we do is a form of being Ovid Hashem. But the only thing we can give to him is gratitude. Okay, and that's the basis of all of our avodas Hashem in general. And if Hashem is a giver, so Hashem made man a giver. Like it says, but man is made in the image of God. Person can have mercy, take mercy, pity, and do good and give. But the power of taking, the power of taking is the desire of a person to bring to himself everything which comes within his domain. It's the power which people call love of self. Ushorish kolorosis, the source of all evils. So this is very anti-contemporary pop psychology. Because the contemporary pop psychology, they say, before you love anybody else, you have to love yourself. That is a very basic principle. And Rav Dessler saying, you don't have to love yourself. Now, this is very different than Reb Shimon. If you quote Reb Shimon said that you're supposed to love yourself, and you're supposed to expand your sense of self. If that's what does not say, even though there's similarities, to a certain extent it's very different, because he says love of self is a very bad midah. And people's love of themselves is what brings people to do lots of bad stuff. He's going to expand all these things. That people who take and they don't pay anything. Vonikra Gazlan, he's called a thief. If he steals with violence, or Ganav, actually he's called a robber, or a thief. He takes it without the knowledge of the owner, or Ramai, or a cheater. When he tricks people, con man. He tricks people into giving things seemingly from their own will. So he says the general categories and specific categories of these types of individuals. In other words, national and individual. People wage war. People wage war are usually people who want to take. Unless it depends, obviously. There's defensive war and offensive war. But the people who go on the offensive war, they're the people who want to take from other people. Right? Rotzchamim, people who kill other nations because they want to take what they possess. Says Rav Dessler, very bleak statement. V'ein shofet lamo b'adam. There's no human being who can judge them. Zulas hakel yisbarach lebadam. Something we do about that. You can't do anything about a mass murderer. You can't do anything about a Stalin or a Hitler, unless the Kodesh Baruch Hu decides that something should be done about them. Ultimately, their judgment comes in the world to come, not in this world. We can't do anything for them.
No, he's the one that brought them here, no?
What?
Hashem brought them here, no?
Yes.
So you say you shouldn't
Hashem gave and Hashem has to take.
You shouldn't try to kill them?
What? You should, but what he's saying is that that's not justice. Killing is not justice, right? You can't, if someone's a mass murderer, even to kill him, even torture him, it's no comparison to what he did, right? If you want a real sense of justice, it's not in this world, it's in the world to come. But then they're individuals, small scale. Hashem yichidim yigzolu, they steal from individuals. So for that, we set up judges to punish them. Reminding that some in order to be saved from their wickedness. They also teach people, ideally, a shofet in Tanakh is not just a judge in the sense that they judge court cases, but they also are supposed to impart wisdom to people, to teach them, largish b'tzedek, to sense what's just. A person should feel embarrassed if he does something bad. Promise like this: if these are certainly with justice, it's external, right? If I throw you in jail because you stole, I'm not teaching you to be a giver. I'm punishing you because you're a taker, but I'm not changing your personality. Even if a judge says, you know what? Let's teach people about justice. Justice doesn't make people givers. It just restrains their taking, but it's not going to make them into givers. So it's still there. That was the root of evil. Don't believe in man and his civilization. Because under this cover, a person can cheat and steal and rob and murder. So, in other words, if you scratch the surface of the person, any person can become a wicked person. This is two things. First of all, Rav Chatzkel Levenstein, who actually was the mashgiach in Panovich after Rav Dessler, said, and this is this is what I heard he said, and I don't know if you agree or disagree. I don't know if I agree or disagree, but he said, if you give any yeshiva bacher license to kill, you make him 007, James Bond, right? You say you have license to kill, and you won't be punished neither in this world or the next. And then you give him a gun, he'll become a serial killer or a mass murderer. Says the yeshiva bacher is just restrained by his fear either of human punishment or of divine punishment. But he's not really a good person underneath. It's a very harsh statement. Chatzkel is a very harsh man. They're saying that this is human beings, right beneath the surface, there is a tremendous capacity to do evil.
What does that mean that people that would do that?
No, it's the person you hate. You don't eliminate them because you're afraid. But if they came to you and said, no, don't be afraid, we won't do anything to you.
Saying most people would do that. I don't know.
I don't think so. The
I don't
army,
think
they
so.
have
I don't-
hours and hours.
Good.
and
I'm
hours
glad
to
you
kill
say that.
people.
I'm glad
I
you
think
say
it's
that.
such a cautionary tale that everyone's capable.
I'm glad. No, not true. So I just taught. I teach every year.
You gotta listen to Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
I teach every year, and it happened to be that I taught it this past week in school about the Milgram experiment. Who here knows about the Milgram experiment? Anybody? Milgram experiment was
You spoke about it once.
what?
You spoke about it. I got one. You spoke about it.
Yeah. So the Milgram experiment is
You know what it is?
Yeah, it's an experiment with we tell someone.
Yeah.
We put one person in charge. Or something.
What?
Is that what the one they put one person in charge?
No. The Milgram experiment was like this.
You kill yourself or kill the other person?
They told people we're making a study of memory, and whether memory is improved by punishment. What they're really studying was whether the person who's administering the punishment will go on and to what point. And the punishment is like this: they were supposed to administer electric shocks. For each wrong answer, the amount of voltage increased. 15 volts it started, and all the way up to a lethal 450 volts. The person obviously was not really getting the shocks. He was in on because it was just a setup. But the person administering the shocks didn't know that. And at a certain point they had the learner, as they called him, they had pre-recorded screams and shouts and say refusing to go on at different levels of the shocking. And the question was who would still go to the end. And this experiment has been replicated many, many times over. And the milligrams originally was in 1961. About 65 people went, or 65% of the people went all the way to the end. Now, bear this in mind. They asked psychiatrists and psychologists ahead of time how many people they thought would go all the way to the end in such an experiment. So they said maybe 1 or 2 out of 100, maybe 1/10 of 1%, according to several others. It was 65%. And when this has been replicated in various different situations, it was done in England a few years ago, 75%. It was done in Poland in 2017, 90%. Went all the way to the end. And there's a variation they did because somebody thought, well, maybe they knew that they weren't really shocking. So obviously, if you watch the films, they knew they thought they were really shocking to people. But they said, okay, we'll eliminate that. Let's, instead of a human being who we can't really shock, let's use a nice fluffy puppy and really give shocks. And they did that. They did variation on the experiment using the puppies. And out of 26 subjects, 20 went all the way to the end. So even though they saw the puppy in intense pain, and even though they were crying, they went all the way to the end. Now, what this shows, and it's very depressing, is that it's obviously linked to how good Germans followed Hitler, good within quotation marks, and the Nazis. So it shows that many human beings have the capacity for evil right beneath the surface. If somebody tells them, and a person in a position of authority, in this case, a professor in a lab coat, doctors don't have to wear white coats. They wear them because it gives them authority over their patients. So a person in a lab coat tells you to do something, and you think it's for the purpose of science, then you'll go on. You'll go on to way past what is normal, ethical, and get into give 450 volts of lethal electric current to somebody. So the capacity for evil we think is something we don't possess. Now, when I tell this to people, some people say, "Well, we're Jewish; it wouldn't happen to us. We wouldn't do it." And there's some truth to that because we have a concept in Judaism: "Ein shlich devar avera." You can't be the agent of somebody else.
Yiddish guilt.
Right? Yes. But then I ask them, what happens? Or sometimes they hop on their own. What happens if your Rosh Hashiva asks you to do it? And then they get, or your Reb Chaim Kanievsky in extreme cases, and then they get all distraught because they know that if somebody like that told them to do it, so then they would do it, right? Now, it happens to me, a tzaddik is a tzaddik, so we don't think that that's going to happen. But some tzaddikim are not really tzaddikim, and that's what you have people like who are seem to be tzaddikim, but actually are big rishoim, who cause people to do averos just by wielding their authority.
Do you have any
Yes. Rabbi Berland, the Breslover. A guy who's just taken out of prison for doing terrible things to women, Rabbi Ezra Scheinberger. There are people like this who actually, so to name names, who are like that. So they use their position of authority to convince people to do Averis. And so it's not so simple. We think of ourselves.
There are also Gedolim that will allow people, their Talmidim to do terrible things. Like, happened a couple times in Israel where Rosh Yeshiva had disagreements, and then the students in the yeshivas go and beat each other up, or worse. Uh,
What about students who burn people's houses down? Not too far away from here.
Yes.
Uh,
There are all sorts of things
what
which.
do you call that person a guddle, though? What in charge?
But you're not
Yes, but what happens? This happens in Eretz Yisrael. A gadol tells people, you know what? In order to stop Yeshiva Bachram registering for the army, go sit in the middle of the street and stop traffic. And that means that ambulances can't get by, and buses with dozens of people can't get by. So people say that, well, I'm doing a holy thing. It's not simple. We think that most of us are basically righteous people. Doesn't mean we're not good people. We are good people. But we're not. We have a very, very thin membrane separating us from being bad people. And that's what he says, don't believe in man and in his civilization. Because beneath this, that's what happened in Germany. Everybody thought Germany was such a civilized country. It went to, and look what happened. So it can happen anywhere. We hope it doesn't happen in America. But it can happen anywhere.
So the thought of Das Torah doesn't exist.
It has to be
There should be no when you follow blindly.
No, there should be no you follow blindly. It's interesting because it says, there's a Rashi in Chumash that says, I feel yamin shu small about small shu yamin. But the Yerushalmi says not that way. The Yerushalmi says that I feel yamin shu yamin about small shu small. In other words, it says, not if they tell you yamin is small and small is yamin. Only if they tell you that something, this is right and this is wrong, in a way which makes sense. So it's not a simple thing, yes. Obviously, there's a concept of Das Torah, which we should rely on to a certain extent, but never, ever completely. Because you know what? There was a guy named Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was a big tzaddik for 80 years. And at the end of his life, he became a tzdoki. Right? So, that's why Chazal say, it doesn't say, Kodesh Baruch Hu is not miyachid shmo tzaddikim while they're still alive. Right? It never says Elokei somebody while they're still alive, except by who? We said it was a few weeks ago. Where does it say Elokei so and so when he's still alive? Yitzchak. Because Yitzchak, once he was blind, was chashuv kamei, so therefore Hashem said, okay, Yitzchak. I'm the God of Yitzchak.
He was considered dead because he was blind.
Right. I'm saying that's the only reason why. So
But the examples the Rav gave are people who are not really Gedolim. They're masquerading as Gedolim, but they're not really Gedolim.
yeah, but the problem is you have to
You
be
don't
able.
know, but if someone came down, Moshe Rabbeinu came and told you to do something, wouldn't follow blindly?
Moshe Rabbeinu, yes. No, nobody else is Moshe Rabbeinu.
So I'm saying, but if someone you knew was a Gedolim.
What?
Again, the issue is that a lot of people dress up as Gedolim or act like Gedolim, and they're not Gedolim.
Right.
And it's hard to know sometimes who's a Gedolim.
Right.
So but if someone that you knew, somehow you knew, now he came and told you, this person is the Gedolim.
Okay, then you had a nevuah.
And you would follow blindly even if
If you have a nevuah, if a navi tells you to do something, yes.
The best example is Avram with the case Yitzchak. Hashem told him to kill his son. He said, okay. Okay.
If a navi comes, somebody who's that's the halacha in Judaism. If a navi comes and tells you to do something, even if it seems to go against halacha, and he's known, he's been certified as a legitimate navi, you do it. Nobody else.
How do you know it's not the Yitzhara?
What?
How do you know it's not the Yitzhara?
So Choshen Baruch Hu say you can trust Nevi'im. The Rambam says, it's interesting, Lashon. The Rambam says, it's like we have exeris, he says, that we trust a Navi is the same type of exeris akasuv that we trust two witnesses. Torah says there's certain things, I can't leave you without any guidance whatsoever. So therefore Hashem said, two witnesses you can use in capital punishment. A Navi is somebody who can lie if he tells you to do something which seems to be against halacha.
That's one of my questions on the case Yitzchak. Is like, I understand like the beginning part where Hashem tells Avram to do it. And why did Hashem tell him? Because only Hashem could have told Avram to kill his son. Otherwise he wouldn't do it. So it doesn't make sense, right? Especially being that he's preaching about like you can't kill for the vote
Right.
like that. So Hashem comes.
Have goes directly from Hashem.
Right. That was the only way he could. So then a Malach comes to him and says, "Stop. Why wasn't that Malach?
Good. Yeah. Go on.
Why wasn't that Malach not one another test? He just went through 10 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this was the 11th and the 12th and the 13th.
Yes. What's the answer?
I don't know.
Oh, come on. So to kill somebody has to be Hashem. To save somebody, it's even a malach.
But who said it's not? Who said it's not the Yitzhar? Saying stop.
No, he knew the difference between Yitzhar because he met the Sultan on the way to Al-Qaeda. He knew exactly what the Sultan was. He knew this was a malach Hashem.
It's not a test. And the aisle there also was a test. How do you,
What?
Where do you draw the line? Okay, now this is
You
real.
draw when it's pikuach nefesh. You err on the side of caution. You don't. If Hashem tells you to kill somebody, then you kill somebody. But if even a malach tells you not to kill him, you don't kill him. That's I think it's pashut. Why don't you like about that?
Because again, it's a test. Maybe it's a test.
No, but I'm telling you, you err on the side of caution. You don't kill somebody. If a malach comes and tells you, and it looks reasonably like a malach,
Hashem told you to do it.
it doesn't matter. The malach said he was sent by Hashem. He used Hashem's name. By the way, that's also brought down as one of the answers to your question. Although I don't like to use it, but it does because it undermines my own answer. But the answer is given that since the malach used Hashem's name, and malachim are not allowed to use Hashem's name unless they were sent by Hashem, so therefore he knew it was Hashem was sending the malach. Okay.
That's a better answer.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that answer better. I don't. I like my answer better. Yeah.
Has any Navi ever lost his status of being a Navi?
What?
Has any Navi ever lost his status of being a Navi?
Not the major Nevi'im in Tanakh. Minor Nevi'im, yes.
Because you said you follow a Navi blindly.
Right. So minor Nevi'im, yes, but the minor Nevi'im are not necessarily certified. Once a Navi is certified by Sanhedrin to be an authentic Navi, I don't think he's ever lost his Nevuah. There are hundreds and thousands of Nevi'im time by Rishon after Shemuel, but they weren't certified Nevi'im, right? So they have to be certified in order to have that level of level that we should listen to them. Okay, so he say that, and he says here, "Kitach's mateh underneath the surface."
That's how you get the blue check mark.
They
Yeah.
pay $8 a month.
That's all it takes. So he says, so Chazal revealed the treachery underneath the surface of Amram, and they say, and this is a powerful statement in Pirkei Avos, if not for the fear of the government, people swallow each other up alive. So if you have a state of anarchy, anybody can do anything to anybody else. It's only there's a governmental authority which makes sure that people don't do anything to everybody else and keep people in check. And now he gets to people who don't do anything wicked in what they take. They just love to take without giving anything in return. People who love gifts, vayrushos, and inheritances. People who love to take tzedakah. They just arrested some person for starting a fake GoFundMe and doing claiming $400,000 for a poor person who existed, but there was a scheme. So people are able to do all sorts of things in the quest for self-aggrandizement. They like exploiting other people by making large profits. That's considered to be takers. Shlomo said, if you want, and he's going to explain all of this later on in the Kuntres. People, it's a very interesting thing Shlomo says, which is a chiddush to the average American, right? Sonei matanos yichya. You live if you don't take gifts. These two strengths, these powers. Giving and taking. The whole world is binary. Just like a computer has binary code, zeros and ones, everything in the world is binary. Giving and taking. Now, of course, you can make complexities out of that. Just like you can make of the zeros and ones, the computer, very complex code. You can make of giving and taking very complex mitos. But everything in the world is based on either giving or taking. Those are the two powers which drive everything else. You should know, there's no middle ground in this, no middle way. A person is always going to have an ambition to one of the two sides. And the quest of the heart internally, there are no compromises. Yes, in practice, you can be taking even though you're a giver. And you can be a giver even though you're a taker. But the question is, what's inside your heart? You're either a giver or a taker. We're not able to know if you're a giver or a taker. But you are either a giver or a taker. There's Zaklau, this is general principle. There's no middle ground in what interests you, what you're pursuing in this world. So everything you do, a deed, a speech, and a thought, unless you come up with something which is it's almost impossible to conceive of, something which solely has to do with yourself, in and of yourself, without any connection to the world around you, saying you're either giving and doing chesed, or chotef, or grabbing v'notel, and seizing. In attitudes in the heart, we don't have anything which is optional. Either that which we're mandated to have, or issa that which we're forbidden to have. Now we're going to get close to closeness. In other words, in your heart, even if you accept gifts, you have to understand the drawback in accepting gifts. Why it's a problem. Why I shouldn't want to accept a gift. So in a person's heart, a person is either a giver or a taker. How it manifests itself in what he's doing is not necessarily what's in his heart. But the person is either a giver or a taker. And again, all this is just introduction. All this is going to explain at much greater length. Okay, well, these Baranian said, this will be explained later on. It doesn't look like we're getting a minute, right?
One's coming.
One's coming?
Yeah.
Is that where we have 9? Okay. So let's go on. B'masal matan. Now, Perek Beis is about capitalism. Masal matan is commercial activity. And so, before we start that, the Torah is neither capitalist nor communist. The Torah is something in between. It really is, the Torah state is a social welfare state. In other words, people are allowed to be entrepreneurs, they even encouraged to be entrepreneurs, but they're encouraged at the same time, they're required to make sure to support others in society. Rav Elyashiv, for those of you who are anti-social welfare, you should know the Rav Elyashiv holds, he wrote that society is required to have universal health insurance. At least Jewish society, not necessarily non-Jewish society, but Jewish society has to have universal health insurance because each person is mechuyev to ensure the health of everybody else, of all other Jews. So there's this idea, we're not capitalists, we're not communists, but we have a major social welfare system built in, obviously with matrumas and maisros to our system. But he's dealing right now with the question first of capitalism. People who are merchants, who are active commercially, they're going to ask. You say only giving is good. Every taking is a bad midah. But this is going to disturb the order of the entire world. Everybody in the world is created to give and to take. Right? Commercial activity is called give and take. The kachas there's the lamo. That's how Hashem arranged the world. Is not man like any other creature in the world? What's your problem? Okay, we give and we take. It's not a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. That's normal. That's the way the system should work. Sometimes I give, sometimes I take. Sometimes you give, sometimes you take. So he says, so we have to follow the truth here. Kigam be'elu shnei minim hema. There are two types of people, even the people who are both giving and taking. Yesh sheitlu arbei v'achmat yitnu. There are people who take a lot and only give a little. Right? These are the merchants that use every opportunity to make money. Without taking account if their toil and work, which they did, are really worth the profit which they get in return. So there are people who obviously use the most shoddy materials in construction, or people who sell defective merchandise, and so on and so forth, where they're trying to maximize profits. So yeah, they're giving and they're taking, but they're trying to give as little as possible and take as much as possible. Right? That's happening. It's very, very prevalent. I think it's something which we see all the time. And they'll also make an effort to make a profit from the failure of their friends, and their lack of knowledge. Right? In other words, if I let's say insider trading or something like that, I want to take advantage of your lack of knowledge and my knowledge, or something else where I sell you, let's say, a car. I sell a car and I don't tell people, for a buyer, what's really wrong with the car under the hood. Right? So that he doesn't know. I take advantage of him. It happens all the time. Right? Not that we do it, but some people do it. Is not deceiving and cheating without any distinction. And certainly those who have tremendous commercial activities and have tremendous property, and they eat the toil of others, with usury, with loans at high rates of interest. Those who for light wages, in other words, they work to make their people work. Hard work for low wages. Just finish the paragraph. Those people who rule over nations, they're going to rule over them with a heavy hand. Some people they benefit their nations. All these, they take a lot and they give a little. So a person is going to explain, obviously, how good commercial activities are supposed to take place. That's in the next paragraph. But commercial activity in which a person is trying to maximize profits and minimize expenditures, it sounds like good business practice, right? Is not always a good thing, because you end up being more no-tell than no-say.
But if somebody knows that let's say somebody who's selling defective products or damaged products, and the person knows that it's slightly damaged, I'm paying less for it.
That's fine. That's fine. That's no.
People run businesses like that.
Right, we're talking about somebody who doesn't know.
Right. Someone can be very successful. Someone can be wildly successful above their efforts and be doing it honestly.
Right. But it's not just a question of honesty here. He's going to tell us that honesty is not enough. But right now, we're talking about the dishonest ones so far. Yes. Okay, we'll stop here for today. You guys, I have to ask you a favor about this. This happens to be that the Kuntres develops slowly, and then it gets into really deep stuff. So be patient with it, okay? Give it a couple weeks, and you'll see how amazing it gets.